Alright everyone, if you hear a little bit of background noise, the fan is aimed in this general direction. It's way too hot. We're in the middle of a massive heat wave by like Netherlands standards, so bear with me. The other day, Twitter decided to ban Bitchute links on site. So like if you tried to post a Bitchute link, it wouldn't go through. Now initially, you could get around it with like TinyURL and Bitly and some of those, and it would just show a warning. You could, because there's a gap between what Twitter is seeing as the actual link, although it knows where it's going, and then the actual site. The other way to do it was just to use Minds, because if you put the Bitchute link in a Minds post, Minds blocks Twitter apparently from knowing actually what's on that post. And so it was hilarious. So it was like the quickest workaround ever and would have been impotent. But now they've scaled it back, and now you can post the direct Bitchute links, and it just gives you a warning. Now the warning is specifically for several things: spammy behavior, phishing/malware, and then the one that I'm assuming they're applying for the reason to have this link protection sort of thing is anything off-site material that might be against Twitter's TOS if directly posted. Now that depends on the Bitchute video, and this is probably why they switched to that instead of blocking it outright. And I know why this is happening, because leftists in the wake of Bitchute hitting the top 1,000 in the US on Alexa, in the wake of them skyrocketing over the last couple of months, in the wake of them being able to become fully solvent, more or less, 75% funding, they're going to have their own commenting platform, kick Discuss off the site. In the wake of the success that has been Bitchute, what the lame stream is worried about is not me being on Bitchute. While I am not an extremist or a fanatic, and I have mainline what I consider very, very sane commentary, it's still a niche sort of thing. Most people aren't really interested in political commentary. Most people don't even vote. We've got to keep that in mind. We're talking about a small proportion of the population that's really sort of politically aware. They're not worried about someone who does obscure philosophy. They're not worried about someone who does edgy content. They're not worried about that. They're worried about mainstreamers starting to use Bitchute, because what will end up happening if that occurs is that Twitter, which partners openly with like Google, with Facebook and stuff, the big 5 or 6 companies are basically at this point a vertical monopoly. One hand therefore washes the other. Google has been demoting Bitchute links in search now for quite some time, Gesundheit. Now Twitter is deciding to act up. The reason why is because left-wing craptivists are trying to convince people that it's a Nazi site. Well, they're doing that. They're scrambling hastily to convince people that's the case, and so far it hasn't really worked, because if enough mainstream people start using it and realize, hey, a lot of the content on there is, at this point, gaming commentary, fucking fishing videos, makeup tutorials, ASMR, news that is as dry and boring as something that you'd get from NBC back in the 1980s, if people realize that it's not really geared towards my extremism, and that the 30 million some odd people using the fucking site regularly are not all Nazis, because that's goddamn ridiculous, then it breaks free of all possibility of censoring it. It'll become difficult for payment processors to justify not working with them. If the site gets big enough and it looks profitable enough, they will start to ignore the cringe fringe. Bitchute would end up being potentially a very dominant competitor. It's already managing, despite all of the algorithmic manipulation on search results, despite all of the hit pieces, despite all of the bitching and screeching about how it's supposedly this horrible, horrible out there site, when people actually get there, a lot of what they see is fucking my material and stuff like that. Well, my commentary is still allowed on YouTube too. Supposedly Bitchute's this extreme place, but if you look at the actual list of who's who on the platform, most of them are still operative on YouTube too, and I don't see Twitter banning their links. Why? Because that would alienate a lot of their users and it would become unprofitable. Even if they were bowing before pressure from a craptivist group, they would say, well, now we got fucking 100 million posts a day of YouTube videos, it wouldn't be a good idea for us to do that. They're afraid of Bitchute getting to that point. It's probably not far off. If Bitchute, even encumbered by algorithmic manipulation and throttling by the big sites, if Bitchute continues at even half of its current trajectory, it'll be almost twice the size it is now at the end of the year. It'll probably be fully solvent. That is, the site will have better infrastructure, everything will be fast-tracked, and by sometime in next year, it'll be almost unrecognizable. It'll also be considerably larger. It will be a mainline site. It will be a major website. It's already getting into the echelon anyway. They're afraid of that because the problem is the person running it and the idea behind it is fundamentally left libertarian when you really think about it. I think Vahi doesn't strike me as the sort of dude who's exactly an ANCAP, if you know what I'm saying. If libertarian sort of ideology or just free speech tech ideology in general holds a major site, that site then can potentially embolden other upstart sites too. They work directly with Subscribestar. Well, Subscribestar is the only real competitor of Patreon at this point. They've gotten around payment processor bans. They've gotten around all of the psychobabble manipulation propaganda bullshit of the legacy media. And by the way, when we talk about the corporate media, you're not talking about like the far left. They work with the craptivists for money reasons. And they're a bunch of neoliberals. They want the lamestream tech sites to remain dominant too because the lamestream tech sites fundamentally support their neoliberal policies. They all support the basic same premise. It's funny, increasingly free speech tech is no longer even in the United States. That's the other part. If you look at the who's who of those big sites, they're all US based. They're all Silicon Valley based. While Subscribestar, if I remember correctly, is Russian based. Bitchute is technically UK based, although I don't know whether that's 100% non-malleable at this point because the UK is becoming more draconian too. Fucking Dailymotion's a French site that existed before YouTube, and I have to use them too. Even people who haven't been to platform, fundamentally what this amounts to is that a bunch of billionaires have begun to harass private individual creators by trying to go after any platform that is actually amenable to their needs. That's basically what it boils down to. This isn't about fighting Nazis. They're not worried about Nazis. They don't care if a bunch of Nazis congregate on a website. Hell, it's just something else that they can write about on a slow news day. But if they have to write about, well, the new top 100 website, one of the fast rising websites, Bitchute. 10 years ago, if Bitchute had started to exist and was doing what it's doing right now, all the tech magazines and stuff, they wouldn't call it a Nazi site. They would be saying, oh, this pro-liberty, very American-style site, but it's based in the UK, and it's innovating with peer-to-peer technology. They'd be talking about how it's innovative. They'd be talking about how it's got good ideas for the tech world. Now instead it's just wall-to-wall propaganda about somehow the site being overrun by extremists. Again, #1 Bitchute user here. I've never been banned off of any mainline tech site either because I'm not actually an extremist. Hit pieces from the Wall Street Journal mentioning me, name-dropping my channel, and BuzzFeed of all places complaining aside, that's just not me. Now, I'm top dog on the platform, and if you look again at a who's who of who's top on the website, there are two different groups of people. People who invested early and often because they are fundamentally libertarian, and they believe in free speech tech and care about their audiences, and people that have already been to platform. Who gets deplatformed? Political outsiders. I wouldn't be surprised in the future to find a bunch of communists using Bitchute. And by the way, when they do that, that's good. That's not a bad thing. There shouldn't be any echo chambers. The fact is, Twitter has devolved into an echo chamber. It's just a bunch of leftists that are sucking each other off all the time. That's all it boils down to. If I got banned by Twitter tomorrow, it wouldn't affect my life in any meaningful way. The only thing that it's really useful for is a notification machine and a convenient place to do direct messaging without having to give out your email to every Tom, Dick, and Harry. That's basically the only purpose of Twitter. It's an echo chamber. Yeah, I go and I shitpost there. If I stop shitposting on Twitter, does that really negatively impact anything related to my content creation? No, I don't fucking give a shit. So, you know, my reaction to this, initially, if they had retained the ban, I just would have started popping the Bitchute videos links from mines on Twitter. It wouldn't have made any difference. Most people are capable of clicking an extra link. Most people are capable of doing 2 clicks instead of 1. It wouldn't have even reduced the input of views, I think. #2, though, my reaction now is going to be to post every Bitchute link each day. So just on Twitter, not on like Parler and Gab and all the others, but just on Twitter, just out of principle, I'm going to start posting all of the Bitchute uploads once they go live, because it auto-loads all the videos I upload anyway. It grabs them from YouTube and re-ups them to Bitchute. Well, now I'm going to be sharing out those links too. So thank you, Twitter. You've made me decide that it's good to have even more Bitchute links on your website. None of which will breach your TOS either. Of course, Twitter looks for any excuse at this point to take anyone who's fully independent and try to boot them off. But again, who fucking cares? Their system's a joke. Twitter just got over a couple weeks ago. What was it? Some fucking teenager hacks their fucking site and manages to grab control of Joe Biden's official account of all things. And they're sitting there worried about Bitchute links being malware or spammy. Twitter of all sites is not in a position to goddamn complain about security or TOS or the content of the site. Dude, there's hardcore porn on Twitter. There's all sorts of weird shit on Twitter. It's interesting, on Twitter, you can stick your cock in a beehive and upload a video of that to Twitter perfectly within TOS. You can do that. You can have like midget gangbang shit on Twitter. Nobody cares until you utter an incorrect political opinion. Then it's a huge problem. I know Hope Not Hate doesn't have any problem with the weird shit that's on Twitter already. Now, they only have a problem with Bitchute links. They were openly encouraging, oh, these sites, they need to start blocking it. By the way, some people are reporting that Facebook blocks the links, but I don't seem to have that problem. Maybe it's just in DMs that they do that or something, but they do that for a lot of different websites that you can actually post links to. And again, you can always put it in a Minds post and bounce it onto these sites. Or you just say, screw it and delete Facebook and just use Minds. I'm considering deleting my Facebook just because there's no interaction on the group, and I don't use it for any personal purpose at this reason. It's fucking bullshit. There's no purpose. These sites, this like Boomer Book and Twatter are relics of a past age. The only mainline site really that retained relevance was YouTube. And that's just because it was the ultimate hegemon of video hosting. Nobody could compete. They couldn't make it profitable. Bitchute appears to have finally cracked that mold, and these people are terrified because it looks just like the dawn of the first wave of social media. That too was very pro-liberty. It platformed dissidents, explicitly in some cases. Dissidents all around the Middle East and stuff. I remember when the Tunisian overthrow by fanatics was happening, student protesters were using Facebook to try to organize against them, and they won. They used Facebook and Twitter for these things. Same within Egypt. Protests and so forth, they get organized on these groups, and as long as a bunch of neoliberals are staging a rally, of course, these sites now don't care. Initially, it was pro-liberty movements largely, anti-war movements, anti-fanaticism, and so forth. Now you can't even be anti-fanatic on Facebook. You'll get called like Islamophobic or something. It's a pile of horse shit. That's about all. Peace out.